Welcome, dear friends, to this last session of the Planetary Transition meeting that we'll have. And welcome to our Saturday meetings where we come together to study, to share a moment of happiness with one another, and discuss great topics and learn from one another. Again, it's still online and trying to protect ourselves as much as we can. Hopefully, soon we'll be sharing these moments together. But until then, let us contemplate what we have and the capabilities that we have to share knowledge and encouragement and happiness with one another through the web. Before we start and we go into tonight's session, we would like to share a passage of the book Happy Life and pray together. If a difficulty emerges to block your path, do not waste time. Go around it. If an unexpected problem threatens your balance, do not be upset. Silence your rebelliousness and try to solve it as best as you can. If someone whom you love has changed their behavior towards you or deserted you, stay serene. The rebel and the deserter, with their irrational attitudes, have lost their reason. Be calm. What you lose now, you will obtain later. Whatever happens to you, if you know how to deal with it, will always be for your future good. These are the words of Joana de Angelis in the book Happy Life by the medium Divaldo Franco. On this note, we would like to invite everyone to pray with us, acknowledging this moment and giving ourselves the ability to feel calm and feel at rest, happy, encouraged with these moments in our lives. We ask you, dear Lord, that you guide our minds and our hearts so we all can benefit from the teachings that we're about to receive, the reminders, and most importantly, our connection. Yes, through the video conference, listening to one another, sharing our comments and our ideals, but yes, sharing this moment to the best of our abilities. This way, being thankful, encouraging one another to a better life. We pray for those who could not or has not yet given into moments like this, or perhaps because they don't have yet, they haven't connected, praying that they can find a moment of joy like this in their lives so that they can re-energize their energies with something uplifting, caring, and helpful for everyone. We pray for the mentors of the SSB guiding us, our mentors, the mentors of this message that we are about to share, so we can be guided into a planet of regeneration. We thank you, dear Lord, and so be it. Once more, good afternoon, everyone, and good evening, since we're going to go into our evening here. For those of you following our schedule, we had a couple changes that had to happen to help one another, to accommodate our needs. We were going to present this message on the following Saturday. However, we made some changes, and here we are, covering this last message of the book Planetary Transition. This is session 11, where we're going to cover the two last chapters of this book. What I would like to say, with our hearts full of joy and very emotional, is that we want to give truly our hearts to this work that has been done by Divaldo Franco, Manuel P. Miranda, and all the other mentors, helpers from the beyond who brought us this message. If anything that we can live with one another through this message and through all these moments that we had, is that there's goodness, there is there is a helping hand or helping hands, if we will, in our lives. No matter all the difficulties that we see, this year has been very, very difficult for many of us in every sense of the word. And we would like to acknowledge that this big reminder that this book, this message has been that we are being watched, we are being helped. And we would like to emphasize again this message of encouragement to all of you out there. We're coming towards the end of the year, and we are still facing a lot of difficulties in our lives, tough moments. Each one of us have our difficulties, our day-to-day battles to fight and to conquer. But nonetheless, we have moments like this. We have books, we have teachings like this that really encourages us and put us forth, and it reminds us keep going, right? So I would like to start this message not as a farewell, because you will see that we'll give continuation to this work, but to an acknowledgement that there's still help to all of us from the beyond and with us here. So, in any case, what have we covered thus far? Well, the whole book, except for the last two chapters that we will be seeing this afternoon into this evening, which is Difficult Battles, chapter 21, and preparations for the conclusion of our work. Right, and we just to kind of get a glimpse of what happened the last two chapters. We actually saw the battle of the spiritual realm along with the incarnated minds in Spiritist Center in different arenas, trying to fight those whom we have heard in the past, and now they're coming back to get paid, if we can say it that way, confronting them in a positive way, right? To tell them, look, we didn't come here to fight. We came here to fight our imperfections, and that is by extending a hand to one another. But not necessarily, we know that that's not easy, and that is not going to happen overnight. So we saw the difficult battles between these discarnated minds that are against Christians nowadays, because of what we have done in the past, and they're coming back as Mr. Sadak, who actually in the spirit realm was confronting the group who was trying to help and kind of dismantle what was done in the past, right? So we're gonna see a little bit more of this, and when we go into this title of the difficult battle, it can be deceiving in a way, but Mr. Miranda actually explains to us, and that is not necessarily that it's a battle in terms of going against one group or one person, but a battle with us, right? A change within. And he says the following: our conversations after the memorable meetings address the issues of the deceitfulness of certain low order spirits taken by surprise at the unmistaking of the malevolent visitors. And again, we're referring to Mr. Sadak here. I asked the enlightened director of our work, how dare those fellows try such a thing at that meeting of such high magnitude as that in which we were fortunate enough to participate. Also about the dissolution of the mask used by that wretched spirit to conceal his true identity. How did that occur? As you remember, in the last session we closed, and it was kind of funny because it was the day of Halloween where Mr. Sadak, the spirit, actually didn't present himself. He actually sends a one of his followers disguised as him to the spiritual meeting, to the mediumistic meeting, and again try to conceal his identity, to understand what in fact the mentors, Manuel P. Miranda, and others were participating to help. Their idea was to help, but he did not know this, and he was trying to prevent himself to show himself, and sent someone else disguised as Mr. Sadak. And Mr. Miranda here again comes back and say, how does this happen and why does it happen? And then we see the explanation by the mentor saying, ignorance is an inspirer of cunning, which tries to conceal itself, incurring regrettable mistakes. Rabbi Sadok prepared the disguise with the intent of misleading us. He used idioplasty to create his followers' disguise guys by means of hypnosis, together with his underlings, mental self-fixation to reproduce his Rabbi Sadok's image and let it mold the other's features. With this resource, his ambassador was prepared for the task, allying the arrogance peculiar to the wretch with the hypocrisy Rabbi Sadok is accustomed to in the den where he takes refuge. So he explains how it happened, how it went by, and how did the whole thing develop. Remember, a mediumistic meeting is well prepared, especially at this in this high tone that this meeting was prepared to receive such a magnitude of spirit or spirits, because the disguised mentor there, or the spirit who went representing Mr. Rabbi Sadak, was not alone. If you go back to the previous session or the previous chapter, we will find there was a whole group of individuals, spirits, who came along to this meeting, and they were prepared for battles, right? They were prepared to fight, really, just as we used to do in the past. It's not that we want to again put down their reasons, because their reasons, they're still stuck in their minds, the old minds of the past, where things were settled hand in hand, or really in other ways, right? So we're seeing again the results of ourselves coming against us and saying, well, we need to change, right? I like to highlight this because there is this found notion of other spirits from other religions coming against spiritists, or perhaps Christians, or renewed Christians. But the truth of the matter, yeah, that is happening. However, there is a reason behind it. It's because we mistreated these individuals in the past. And we can go back to those chapters and analyze a little bit differently as well. So then he continues. We realize that what was going on right away, due to his vibratory emanations, in addition to his weak argumentation. We often find ourselves in these minefield-like situations where caution is necessary for sake of compassion and truth. So they were aware of what was happening, and it's important to acknowledge again that they were very well prepared when they were going to this mediumistic meeting, and we're talking about the mentors here. And following that idea, it's important to acknowledge as well that those actually working on the mediumistic plane also have to be very prepared, very well prepared for such a realization. And then he continues and says, thus we focus on his neuralgic point, the thing that would upset him the most, which was the name of Jesus Christ, causing him the emotional distress and imbalance we witnessed. As we remember here, whenever they were to say the name of Jesus Christ, the individual representing Sadak, Mr. Sadak, who actually kept saying, "Don't say this name. He's not all that what you think he is," or in certain ways he said, you keep saying this, but you acted completely different from what he really teach or taught us, right? So now the notion that someone has about a mentor or about Jesus Christ is based on our deeds or on our example, which again, which it has some truth into it, It's not that because we act this way that Jesus is the same way. It's because truly we didn't follow what Jesus taught us. If we were to truly follow it, perhaps we wouldn't be facing these battles nowadays. We must never forget that for the message of evil and those who behave badly, everything is valid as long as it corresponds to the goals they do not follow commendable. To their goals. They do not follow commendable methods because treading the narrow paths of madness, they are unable to decide between what is ethical and what is not, right? Just that, a way for us to understand what is happening to these minds, right? And when we are dealing with evil or any difficult mind, we have to understand that this is, in many cases, how they were vibrating. And this vibration is important for us to understand because it is what keeps us prepared when we have to deal with it. In any case, Mr. Miranda again comes and asks, because of what happened, I asked, should our work continue in the caves of the planet's entrails where he dwells and maintain his set empire of madness, right? Because the taste that we were left at the last chapter was that, okay, this is going to continue, and this they will have to visit these individuals again, and there was a promise that will happen, and we will see this in the future, but not in these chapters. And the question comes afterwards, right? The answer comes right afterwards, and what to do as well, because what the mentor tells us is like, no, we're going to wait. Well, hang in there. And then it's not that we want to see the fight or we want to see the re-encounter, but that's pretty much what lead us to believe that it's going to happen next. But look what the mentor says. This is very, it's a good warning to all of us. Consider the robustness of the empire of darkness and turpitude. An incursion into his den would be neither easy nor prudent for now. Let us remember that since the end of the 15th century, he has been working with other reprobates to wreak revenge on those who hurt him, transferring responsibility to the martyr of Galilee. It is an actual state with all the mechanism needed to support his policy of hatred. It has an administrative organization in a community inhabited by hundreds of thousands of reprobates, some by their own will, others taking their compulsory and subjected to unspeakable suffering, as occur in barbaric cultures under the command of heartless despots. So it's an organization. Believe it or not, doing anything or going to that region right now wouldn't be prudent. And he explains that no, perhaps we need to go ahead and wait. We need to make sure that we take the time to organize ourselves, understand what's going on, right? And he says we must violate the codes of love, for even though our wills are imbued with the best intentions, they are not above the sovereign laws of justice and mercy, from which no one escapes. Here again, the mentor is telling Mr. Miranda that cool down. Let's just wait. Our intentions is not greater than God's law, and we have to respect. Our brothers and sisters, he actually advises then that our brothers and sisters will intensify. These individuals, from working from the dark regions, will intensify their assaults on the servants of the masters as well as against society in general, aiming to win victories of folly and horror, generating mental and emotional disorders and encouraging people's lower tendencies. They hope for responses in the form of ever-increasing moral disarray, culminating in domestic, urban, national, and even international violence through calamitous wars. So the attempt to help, sometimes we think that it's going to make matters, settle matters or make life better. It's quite the opposite. What happened is there is a high incursion of more attacks, right? Because these individuals whom we hurt in the past, they're not going to go ahead and settle easily into a sweet talk or I shouldn't even call a sweet talk or a reparational talk, right? Whether we speak sweetly or not, or we're very direct on what we're trying to accomplish, they're not going to take it easily. So that's why we see, and we're still going to see, a lot of difficult moments of our lives, in our lives in general, because this is not only working in the totality of our different societies or the Earth society, but also in smaller scales between individuals, between situations, small situations in our lives, gatherings, family, situations. So we really have to be on our toes. And when I say this, it's not that we're going to live afraid of any situation, but mainly really watch and pray, where we're always, connected with our mentors, connected with our Master Jesus, as well as God, to really say, look, if there is something difficult in my life right now, let it be it. Let me go ahead and have the courage that I need. Please give me the courage that I need to overcome this, because the attacks will continue, right? And then he continued by saying, they forget that progress is unavoidable and that evil is ephemeral. In their delusion, they have lost the ability to reason with discernment, seeing nothing beyond their defiant activities and their relentless pursuit to round up new followers as victims or sympathizers. So again, the reminder is that wait. Let's just wait. Let's just make sure that they cool off. They understand what we're trying to do here, or not. But there will be an increase of, or an intensification of assaults that it will be happening from those individuals from the lower zone, right? And it's always important for us to remember here, as that, as the mentor is saying, is that, look, let's not forget that there's a law of progress. In the third part of the Spirit's book, chapter 8, the law of progress we can go into detail, is analyzed, and we can go into details, as far as understanding that it's something that we cannot really stop, right? It may come in beautiful ways when we accept to change. It can come in difficult ways where it's through suffering, when it happens through suffering, as well as in ways that are very compulsory, in that we are forced in a positive way, right? It will certainly hurt for us to change and analyze progress in a different way. So we're all being called to this, and they are too. If we have made the change, the little change, and I'm not going to say that we're perfect yet, and we're far from being perfect, but we are accepting the fact that there is a better condition for all of us now. The same thing will happen to all of them. So, what is the next step? What does he tell Mr. Miranda as the next step? What is to do? Because if we cannot go to if they could not go to the region and continue their conversation with Mr. Sadak, what should we do, right? And we ask the same question sometimes when we take leaps in our lives and try to make our lives better by forgiving or asking for forgiveness, but that doesn't happen. What should we do? Should we stop and just wait, or should we continue our lives the best way possible, the best way we can? Look what he says, and we're going to dive into that idea a little bit. Our goal is to decrease the effects of such crude behavior on the social organism, releasing those who have fallen into the webs of obsession due to foolishness and carelessness, thus decreasing the evils taking place in contemporary society. So the mentor is saying, let's just not stand still. Let's just go ahead and continue to move and do something good out of our time, out of our energies, right? We have to make sure that life continues, and there are a lot of suffering that we need to minimize, because the consequences of our actions, inevitably is going to happen. But we can minimize the forces of evil by contributing, to one another, by helping one another, right? By at least giving some sense of unity or encouragement to one another, so we can come out of or come into our senses faster. And it's interesting that at this point, then the mentors call into a other works that they have to do, and they go on into visiting different areas, right? And that is Yvonne Costa, Lopez Neto, and Mr. Miranda as well. And they decided to go into different locations. They went into some public locations. They went into different governmental locations in Brazil as well, in the areas where they were, as well as NGOs. And we're going to see here the reason why they paid these visits. And it's very enlightening, because when we read at first, we're like, okay, so what are they trying to portray here for us? Because we need to bring this to our lives, right? Now we know that perhaps, yes, we have our major battles that we have to conquer, that we still have to fight. But there are day-to-day lives that needs to continue, and there are a lot of people near us who need help as well. So the first place that they went was a hospital. We first chose a public emergency hospital, and could not hide our dismay at the number of the sick and the suffering, as well as the indifference with which they were treated. The room was full, as was the unkept corridor, where the disregarded for human life and the aggressiveness of some staff paid to provide good service predominated. So they go into a hospital and say, okay, let's go ahead and visit the individuals. And these are discarnated, individuals who is trying to help us from the other side. And when they come with their hearts full of joy and encouragement, what they see, completely the opposite, right? In an institution where we're supposed to be cared, we're supposed to be helped. They come in contact with doctors, individuals not paying attention to what they're supposed to do, or to accomplish, not accomplishing what they're supposed to accomplish, and they see a lot of suffering. And this is, again, the picture of a hospital in many public hospitals in South America, Central America, in other countries as well, who does not have the means of helping others as we wish there should be. So it's a bit daunting and kind of sad, but they're there. They're helping. They're using their time to help. Look what happens. Disrespected, concern, this is actually still an explanation of the location. Disrespected concerning their right to support and care, the patients were writhing in all kinds of pain, finding for a spot to see the doctor, who was usually cross, perhaps due to being exhausted or overwhelmed, showing a lack of ethics and compassion for others. And they explain, right, that that Mr. Miranda explains that perhaps this is the actual what happens for some of the doctors. They're pretty tired, and because some of theyese individuals, they're well intentioned, but because they have to work so much, they pretty much go into the condition of indifference towards some of towards their patients. So it's pretty sad. For those of you who have been in Brazil, who is from Brazil, or perhaps know some of the conditions in some of these hospitals, you can connect to it. But this is something that is not only happening in Brazil, but also in many hospitals of the world, perhaps even in the US, where we have the means as well. If you're in that position as a doctor, perhaps, and you don't want to do such a thing, maybe we need to reconsider. And this goes to us as well. If we are in a situation where we have been called, or we have decided to pay our services, whether getting paid or not, let's do the best we can. Let's not turn away from what we're supposed to do, our responsibilities, because chances are we will create more issues. Because one of the things that they notice, and they bring it to us here, and we'll see next, is that there is a huge connection between incarnates and discarnates as well. And let's look what's happening here. The interaction between incarnates and discarnates was frightening. The majority of patients displayed dreadful pictures of spirit-related disturbances to varying degrees of gravity. from simple obsessions to subjugations and unrelenting vampirizations. Here's a case that they brought to us, right? Manuel Filomena de Miranda brings to us. He actually talks about a senior gentleman who was actually having heart issues, right? And he explains that the case was the following. This man, they could see him as if he was chained in metal chains, actually. I mean, one can imagine. He was incarnated, obviously, the gentleman, but having heart issues. But from the beyond, the mentors were able to see him chained, and they saw that there was another spirit attached to this individual, right, making him suffer even more, asphyxiating, actually, due to the chains. And the Yvonne Costa actually comes and starts to, give passes and try to minimize the effects of the obsessor, and helping the obsessor too, because we know that the obsessor is perhaps someone who is in need too. And after a while, after they were able to kind of like relieve the connection between one and the other, they start talking to the obsessor. And for our amazement, the obsessor was no other than the father of the man who was incarnated having heart problems at the hospital. And he starts to explain that the son, the man who is now in the hospital, killed him, asphyxiated him one night to take over his belongings, all his riches. And since then, the father actually has been with him, tormenting him until he would actually move on to the other side, so he can be confronted. They can confront one another. This is the situation that is happening between this man who is suffering. Not only he has a heart issue that the obsessor actually says that developed because of his actually guilt, feelings towards the situation of what he had done, and he started having these heart issues, and as well as now being, let's say, the making it worse, being getting worse because of the connection that he had with the unfortunate father whom he killed. So we see that perhaps once more is someone coming back and saying, why did you do this, right? And now I want repayment. When you owe someone something, guess what? That, someone is going to come into your door, knock on the door and say, where's my money? It's an easy, funny way to say it, but it's exactly what's happening here. He's not being obsessed because there's no God. He's not being obsessed because he's just anyone else. No, because there was a very, let's say, unfortunate action that was done in the past. And again, this was his father that he killed. So Manuel Filomena de Miranda explains to us that it is in these interactions that is happening in the hospital that perhaps if we had a little bit more of knowledge of what's happening in the spirit realm, that we would be more effective with our treatment. And he says the following: when healthcare workers finally understand this serious commitment they have assumed regarding their sick brothers and sisters, awakening to spiritual reality and connecting to prayer, charity, and inspiration, hospitals will be transformed into temples of mercy and comprehensive health. This is amazing because it's taking healthcare to an extra level, right? To a different level that perhaps we never thought about it. Perhaps you and I, who have been studying Spiritism a little bit longer or not, if we may think that this is obvious, but we can also take this to every interaction of our lives. Let us say if you are a banker, let us say if you are an engineer, let us say if you're a mathematician, let us say if you work at an assembly line. The interaction between us and the spirit realm continues to exist wherever we are. And if we think this way, if we think in a more positive and connect with these minds in a positive way, all the sufferings that perhaps, let's say a majority of the sufferings that we have will cease to happen, will stop happening, because we will change the environment. We will connect better. So when we have to complain about something, when we have to pick on a fight or do something against a person that is not positive, let us think twice. Before we do it, let us think twice. And remember that we're not alone. And we're going to attract the minds just like ours, the hearts are they're vibrating just like ours, to the same goal. And if we disconnect by connecting with positive things, the opposite is also true. So we have to make sure that this is not true only, or we apply this only in the medical field, or it's only relevant to doctors, but to all of us, to every situation in which we are. So it's very important that we take this to heart. And we can even say here, when every worker finally understand the serious commitments that we have, that we are always in this amazing exchange with, mind to mind, heart to heart, we will live better lives. Then they move on. They don't stop there. They move on to go to an NGO, right? A non-government organization, where they visit this amazing work that they're doing. That when they get there, we saw that at this location, we saw that we could not do anything more for now. And after following several other appalling cases of unfortunate exchange between the incarnate and discarnate populations, we headed for a home for girls run by an NGO that enjoyed an upstanding ethical reputation in the city. Home to 80 girls, of whose age varied from a few months to 19 years, right? The director was a widow, approximately 55 years old, cheerful and energetic, bearer of excellent vibrations, friendly and sincerely devoted to her work, for which she received no pay at all. A Catholic, as a Catholic, she devoted her work to centuries of Jesus so that it could be forwarded to the Lord, and she sought to infuse all who served in the institution with the sentiments of kindness, courtesy, and love towards children and towards each other. So we see that they're going to now a location that is actually doing good. They're helping one another. This is actually a location that is founded by someone who is very Catholic, and is actually forwarding her hard work and all of those who are in that area to Jesus. And it's interesting that Manuel Filomeno de Miranda also mentions that there are a lot of discarnated mothers working and helping in that location on the beyond. So you see that he showed us a location that is not doing so well, and there's a lot of desperate and suffering incarnate and discarnates there. But now he's showing us the opposite. He's showing us that yes, there are locations throughout planet Earth that is doing an amazing work with selfless individuals, not only in the incarnated side but the discarnated side as well, to help others. And one may think, right, why there are girls that are in these locations, right, left by parents to have no family, right? Why are they there? We're not here to go back to analyze their past and say, because they have done something wrong in the past, but we know there are consequences to our actions. And if they're there are actually reasons for it. But the main thing is, this is a moment of rescue, of change. And this is what Manuel Filomeno de Miranda emphasizes on by saying that the visit went very well because it showed that the first step to the victory of good is the moral transformation of the human being for the better, overcoming bad inclinations and adopting healthy behaviors. The great serious battle is always fought on the inner landscapes of each individual for the installation of love and truth in the heart. It is not an easy struggle in that we are heirs to vices and excesses that lasted through the millennia up until it was possible for us to awaken to renewing positive emotions which must prevail over primitive passions. And this is when he also reminds us that once we become aware of our continuous life, right? Life after life, Jesus reminded us now that we have responsibility over ourselves. We must be responsible for our actions and grow from the deeds that we develop, right? That we make, as well as from the mistakes that we have done to make amendment or perhaps fix what has been done in the past. And Spiritism comes to awaken individuals to a life of noble postulates, which are presented as traditional virtues, magnified by the achievements of behavior and moral elevation, like this lady now that is now has chosen to help these young ladies that are now in this NGO, transforming their lives as well. Thus, self-examination is a non-transferable duty for all those who want to make order and harmony among the earth's people a reality, so much so that we are prepared not to give shelter to the institutions of evil, represented by old tendency, primeval feelings, and the terrible villains, descendants of the ego, the children of fear, anger, and its followers. So all of us are in this transformational conditions now, and through our actions, we're also liberating other minds, because, as John D'Angelo reminds us, we are being watched. We not only connect, but we affect other people as well. So once more, he continues to visit other locations. Now they go and they visit a renowned. They say renowned and joyful. We had it for other spirits dedicated to the good. Our first visit was to a nursing home run by disciples of the Comforter, located in a wooded area on the outskirts of the city. One of the buildings was completely devoted to small, comfortable apartments for men and women, avoiding any kind of segregation and using the conventional family nucleus as the reference. The patients, some very old and senile, in addition to having heartbreaking illness, were treated with warmth and kindness. So we see that it's a place that perhaps, even though there are different individuals being treated, they were treated as if they were families, as they're a family tree. Many of these locations, as we know, perhaps, when they were treating the elderly, they treat them as if they're completely different individuals, from different families and whatnot. But here they made it so warming and welcoming, as if everyone was from the same family. And this matters, right? Because we're all, in fact, from the same family. We're all sons and daughters of God. And this place was very enlightened, mainly because they had the teachings of the gospel. And when I say here the gospel, and including the gospels, the teachings of Jesus. And how do they study? Through the study of the gospel according to Spiritism by Allan Kardec, where the important topics of death, the important topic of death was examined carefully, with neither threat of punishment nor not promise of undeserved privileges in the afterlife. Everything was done with great simplicity, but with fraternal affection, attesting to the consciousness of a job well done. So it's saying, look, there's life after life. There's no punishment. There is no privileges that you will receive on the other side. But basically, we'll reap what we'll sow. But there is also in the reaping as well, learning to be received if what we sow was not so good. So it's important for us to bring this perspective to one another when we're talking about life after life, because it can be very deceiving when we're presenting this amazing science to others, or the idea of spirituality, when we are telling them, be careful what you do now because you're going to be punished. Or if you do A or B or C, you will have certain privileges. So it's important. It's an amazing highlight that he brings to us while analyzing this amazing location that he also visit with others. In this case, they were welcomed by Brother Aurelio, who was actually he was in charge of the work, for he had been its founder more than 50 years ago, We had the immense joy of visiting all the departments, listening to Aurelio's explanation. It's interesting because Aurelio was actually the one who was working in the location while incarnated as well. In another location, they were also welcomed by the benefactor, no other than Albert Schweitzer. And here we can get a little more information in the book as well about Albert Schweitzer's the Nobel Peace Prize in 1952, that became acquainted to the individuals who actually brought the institution together with they were visiting, and he continued the work. He started to help them in the spirit realm when he discarnate. So, an individual who incarnated, elsewhere in the planet now is working in this amazing location in Brazil, helping those who are in need. It's amazing to see the continuation of work, the continuation of encouragement that we receive through these messages in these individuals that continues to multiply their deeds on planet Earth through those who are destitute or going through troubled times as well. Now, we move on to chapter 22, and it's if we can say no other, that is a continuation of this work, a continuation of the amazing, helpers, or a continuation of the illustration of the helpers that we have, the help that we have received here on planet Earth, and that we will continue to receive. And Manuel Miranda says, that night was especially splendid, speckled with a myriad of stars like sparkling diamonds encased in the festive dome. The longings of natures were wafting by, borne in the arms of a light breeze, filled with fragrance. It was a springtime in the regions, and the ground covered with soft grass and that delicate plant exalted before the blessings of life. Why, as we were reading this, we were asking, why is Mr. Miranda saying these things? If anything, folks, let us pay attention to nature. Nature responds to this transformation as well, so well, and to the continuation of life so well, that sometimes, because of the difficult moments of our lives that we're going through, and the tough issues that we are facing, we tend to forget. We forget that that nature is showing us, look, there's life. There is a continuation, right? And I think it's good to highlight here, because in many chapters, as you probably remember, Manuel Miranda always started, depicting or showing to us what was happening. And this is something that it dawned on us when we were reading and organizing this talk tonight, that it's important for us to analyze our surroundings. If anything, we can look at one another, look in our loved one's eyes and see the beauty of life through that as well, right? If we can look at stars, let us look at someone else's eyes, brilliant and vibrating with happiness and life, all that is. It sounds a little bit poetic, or if not very poetic, but it for sure is. There is a reason why Manuel Miranda puts this on the book, truly to remind us nature is showing us that there is life. And then more instructions from the benefactor. Our benefactor, who displays special joy, and this is important for us too, explained that a review of our labors over the previous 3 months was needed, from our first foray into the desolate region of Sumatra to when we and others returned to the beloved planet for endeavors concerning reincarnations during the period of the Great Transition, culminating with our experiences alongside deeply misguided brothers and sisters in the grips of evil. I'll continue, and then we'll make a comment on this. Other labors scheduled for the most miserable areas, those that harbored rebellious spirits, hardened in cruelty, would be set aside until the appropriate time, when guidelines would be established for that purpose. Among these would be a carefully planned visit to the infernal region, home to Rabbi Eliakim ben Sadok, and his misguided subjects. The never ending work of the good would continue in other areas, contributing to the progress of society and the beloved planet. So here the mentor is stopped and said, let us analyze what has been done. Let's stop and not just continue to work, but what have we done? What are we doing now? And what can we do in the future to be more effective? And since we're getting closer to the end of the year right now, we kind of do that, right? We sometimes look back and say, what have I done? And then when we start thinking about the issues and the problems, we tend to stop. I think this comes as a very well structured reminder for us to stop now that we're mid-November, before we even get to December, to stop and rethink what has happened in 2020. Many of us will say, oh my God, what a crazy year. It has been a very difficult year for many of us. Many of us have lost many, of our loved ones, has gone to the other side, but not everything is bad. We have actually one another still. We have messages like this. And what are we doing now to propagate or to secure a very enlightening 2021? And we were talking about 1 year, right? But what about 5 years from now? What about 10 years from now? And what are we preparing ourselves after we discarnate? So I think this is a very good reminder for us, an end of year reminder, if anything, that we can actually propose to one another that there will be battles to be fought for sure in the future, but the day-to-day work that we have to do must go on. We must continue to do such a thing. And these are coming from higher minds. We think that perhaps these individuals, they don't do this. Quite the opposite. They do this more often than we think, to evaluate and reevaluate so that their strategies are well, let's say, proposed and carried out. He actually explains that, after his usual instruction, we start our journey of visiting some of the many couples that had volunteered for the reincarnations of the guests from Alcyone, as well as the illustrious missionaries from the past now returning to the earth. The last phase would be a visit to the Spirit Center, where we had stayed on another occasion in order to fulfill our commitment in that stronghold of love and charity, where countless blessings were lavished on everyone. So they continue to work. They are actually visiting locations. They are, utilizing their time the best way possible, so that they can be as effective as possible. Because rest for them is completely different from the rest that we see here, and this was one of the topics that was actually well explained in this book. That there is no idleness per se in the spirit realm, right? With these higher minds, and this is what we are striving to become as well. Enlightened mind that is always working and serving as well. So we continue to witness the descent of the fascicles of light towards the terrestrial globe, representing the tutelary beings that enter the planet's atmosphere to carry out their glorious task. It's happening as we see, and as we continue to live, we also made note of the voluminous waves of horror and suffering that crush entire communities, choking the ideals of many and razing all constructions whose foundations were not firmly set on rock, according to Jesus' powerful expression. So it's important that we analyze the goodness, and we prevent ourselves from diving into the darkness that is instituted on planet Earth. But that will come to pass, as we have seen here earlier. In some ways, it says, this fight is very old in that there have been good and bad spirits on the earth, those who have chosen progress as life's norm, and those who have opted for different paths result in distressing and harrowing re-beginnings. So this is not going to change overnight. In other words, we will see difficult moments of our lives as well. Just because we see these friends coming from Alcyone who has no connection whatsoever with these individuals who are bringing unhappiness, right, or fear to planet Earth right now.
Mute. You are mute.
I am so sorry it happened here. So let me go back and hopefully I'll get back to where I was here. As we were saying that the spirits will come. These spirits coming from Alcyone, they will continue to see the work, the unfortunate work of those who are not connecting with the good. So the spirits who are not connecting with the transformational vibratory system of the planet Earth, they will be at service at other locations, other planets, where they will be utilized to bring awareness to the level where they are. So it's not that they're going to be punished, but they will be given a different opportunity at a different location, so they don't continue to bring more difficulties to the work at hand. As they were actually speaking, as they were actually conversing, Mr. Miranda and others and the mentor, guess what happened? They were actually at a location, at a Spiritist center where they were before, and one of the individuals who comes and from the spirit location comes and asks for help, and the spirit then from that location says that it was there was an armed robbery involving one of Jesus' workers, threatened with death by a heavily drugged criminal. The victim had prayed for the help of his mentors, and his prayer was heard by us. So one of the mediums, called Evandro, from the Spiritist Center. Now, this individual is incarnated on Earth. He was going to a region to help, to a dark region, to a very unsafe location, to help a lady who was actually she was in need. She had done some things in the past, and now she was actually destituted. She didn't have means to eat or anything like to live, and he was going there to help her or to pay a visit to her. And he was again visit, for lack of better words, by this unfortunate criminal who demanded everything from him: his wallet, his money, his watch, and everything. So the spirit comes and asks them for help, and Manuel P and Miranda explains that, controlled by his terrible obsessor, the young addict was receiving his adversary cruel inspiration to go ahead and shoot his helpless target. So the criminal was under the influence of another spirit who was actually telling him, go ahead and do what you're supposed to do, kill this man, take his thing and kill this man. And then at that moment, Dr. Santana sent his thought towards the cruel discarnate and admonished him, informed him that he would be liable for his lives of both murder and victim, and that the heinous crimes would be added to his nefarious curriculum. So Dr. Santana, then they stop everything what they're doing. They go and help this individual. They go to that location, and he starts, helping the man, the medium, the Evandro, but also explaining to the obsessor of the criminal, saying, look, if you do this, you're not only going to be responsible for Evandro, but you're also going to be responsible to the criminal act that the criminal will actually portray, and you're going to be responsible for this. And he actually induces them into breaking or stopping the act, the obsessor and the criminal as well, and they help actually Evandro from the predicament that he was facing. After Dr. Santana vibrationally disarmed the aggressor, who collapsed from arterial hypertension, Evandro perceived the selfless benefactor's interference and revered from the shock. He picked up his belongings and, teleguided by the guide, he quickly left the dark regions. Dominated by different emotions, Evandro began to remember that the reason that had brought him there was a Christian objective. Excuse me. I put Christina, sorry about that. Charity to young woman, as we mentioned, now living the last moments of her tormented earthly experience, lying on a miserable cot in a flea-infested shack where, in the past, she would sell her feeble body. So, again, Evandro was going to help someone, and he actually almost lost his physical body for a criminal. What does this tell us, folks? That not only when they were contemplating what was happening on the other side, life goes on. Perhaps they were having a good time remembering the things that is happening, the studies that was actually being conducted, the different things as they were. And all of a sudden, this alert of help, please come and help us. One of our friends is in trouble, and they have to stop what they have to do to go help this individual. How many times doesn't that happen in our lives, right? Where we come and we're doing something and we're stopped to go and help someone, but we don't want to do it, right? We don't have the patience to do it. We want to continue with our own lives. The second thing here, the second highlight that we want to bring is that his intention was of help. Evandro was going to a location to help someone who is now about to die, and look what happens. So even when we are working, when we're present ourselves as a true Christians, we will be tested. We will be facing situations that perhaps it's beyond our control. But the last highlight here is that if we pray, if we are well intended, we will receive the help that we need to disarm these situations. Not only, in the we can say the every sense of the word, we will be able to disarm these situations, and we will be helped. No, it's not an easy situation, for anyone to be. Even though we know that there's help, that they will be guided, but it's definitely something that we need to make sure that we highlight it here. And Manuel Filomeno Miranda says, look, working for the good in today's tumultuous world is still a major challenge. Nonetheless, those practicing charity and doing good should not be discouraged. If there are obsessors in the afterlife, always willing to commit heinous crimes, there are also swarms of tutelary angels, vigilant and swift, carrying out labors of true fraternity. So let us not be deceived. Even when we're extending our hands to one another, we will be tested. So it's important for us to pay attention to this amazing highlight that he brings to us. So wanted to finalize here. There's way more to this chapter that we could bring, but because of time, and we're again bringing only the highlights, we like to say that the Dr. Artemio Guimarães give highlights of what has happening and what is happening on planet Earth, as we have said here. It's very important that we go back and read the chapter, and we will see that the highlight on the things that is happening with our brothers and sisters from Alcyone, this massive incarnation. We say incarnation because they have no past connection with us, to bring us the changes that we need, right? Or to emphasize the changes that has been proposed by our Master Jesus already. So he explains and he kind of gives this talk about what's happening. And it's good for us to remember or to realize this work, because it brings us closer to what they're doing, as well as it reminds us of yours and mine and our connection with the good that we can do, right? It's a great reminder for all of us, because one of the things that they highlight in these two chapters, that many times we reincarnate and we go on with the mundane things of life. I get up in the morning, I do what I'm supposed to do, I go to work, come back, and there's nothing beyond that. It's only about supplying the needs of our physical body, supplying our basic needs, and that's basically it. And then we go on wasting precious times of our lives, and in some cases, unfortunately, whole reincarnation, because of our basic needs, right? To finalize, Dr. Santana actually prays, and he says the following. We're going to read this prayer because it's very enlightening, to say the least, as well as a reminder of what we need to do as we continue with this message in our hearts. Beloved Master Jesus, you invited us to work in your harvest, completely unequipped. We present ourselves at the last hour when you welcomed us and offer us a field to plow. Although the days was spent and the night approached, you have allowed us to hurry and plow the fields of hardened hearts, so that we may sow your word of love and light in them. Even after our earlier failures, you did not hesitate to grant us the ballast of confidence to implement your plan for the earth's renewal, despite our little experience and very little wisdom. In spite of our fighting against our imperfection, you visit us countless times to sustain us in our effort to self-transformation for the better, so that we can face our inner challenges and solve our outer difficulties. The days have passed in the hourglass of time, and we have reached the final stage with hands almost empty of deeds. But we, with our hearts and minds thankful for all your wonderful gifts. Forgive us for our inadequacy, limitations, and difficulties. But what we do have, we offer in service to you. And what we would love to accomplish, we try to do it, being at your disposal for future endeavors. Honor us with new callings and reach us with your incomparable mercy, providing us new commitments of light. We thank you, our Lord, depositing in your loving heart our best sentiments of tenderness and gratitude. So this is the amazing prayer that Dr. Santana finishes the chapter, reminded us that we are with Jesus and Jesus are here with us if we wish to be. We have our shortcomings, we have our difficulties, but most importantly, God never ceases to present us the capabilities, the conditions for us to change ourselves. And that is everything, dear friends. That is chapter 22. And there is way more to these chapters that we have mentioned here. There is way more to the moments that we have shared with one another. As I like to say always, that please go and read. And if you have any questions, if you have any comments, contact us, contact me. I would love to share my insights and hear your insights as well, if anything. Now, we have covered everything, but there is more to it. Before we announce the next steps of this amazing endeavor that we have started, right? And what's going to happen next? So I would like to hear from you. We're going to go ahead and go through questions and comments, and I would like to leave some time for us to go over the next steps as well. I'll keep in this right here, this questions and comments here, and we'll keep in this frame. And I would like to acknowledge everyone who came and who's watching, those who will be watching us in the future as well. Thank you for all your participation throughout these different sessions. They are recorded. You can always go back and revisit, read the book, and we'll discuss more. But let us go straight into the questions that we have. I would like to start with Aloysio, where I gotta do some moving here. Excuse me. 1 second. And then we can go back here. Daniel, let's see here. No, I gotta change that. I'll change it later on. I gotta make it a little bit bigger here for me to read. Just hang in there with me. It seems that the humanity have not learned the lesson of the past. With the last events in the world. What is your thought about it, Leo? Great question, Louisa, because I often think about the same thing. I think I actually, at the beginning of the pandemic, or let's say halfway into the pandemic, I brought a case here, an example. I'm quite sure it was one of the meetings that we had, that I noticed on the street people dropping masks. Right. So one, and this was not actually once or twice. There were several times, and we're starting seeing this on social media. People saying, "Look, and this is what's happening." We haven't learned yet, and quite frankly, no. I agree with you, but I'm not saying this in a pessimistic way. It's because it's going to take time for us to truly learn, right? It's going to be hardest work before we see some true transformations. We have to take in consideration when we're analyzing change, the how long we have been stuck on the same ways of life in terms of the wrongdoings that we have done. That in a sense dictates how long it's going to take as well for us to change our behaviors. We don't go from summer to winter. There is fall, right? There is autumn before we get to winter. Nature also tells us the same thing. There is no crazy leap, right? Unless if you live in, in Chicago, as people say, that goes from summer to winter pretty quickly. But there's a reason for that. But it's important for us to analyze that these transformations, they happen very slowly. But the reminder that we get is that there is a persistence on the goodness coming from God and the higher minds that are with us for us to change. So rest assured that we are changing, and people are making small changes. Lastly, what I'd like to say to really energize one another and to encourage one another is that sometimes we think that we leave this planet with great changes, and I don't think changes will happen, in great ways. If someone today is actually making a small change, or at least stop to think before they act, that's a great endeavor. That's a great change in their lives, right? We're coming from a position where we just act. Now we're in a situation where, like, before I do this, will this really help me, or would this help others? So there's these small things in the future will have a great effect on their lives, on their new reincarnation and incarnations of others as well. But the thing is, be encouraged, be sure that we are changing. I hope that helps. Yasko, there is this surgeon in Rio de Janeiro, Paulo César Frutuoso, who wrote a book, Mediunistic Medicine, saying in near future medical staff will take advantage of the presence of spiritual doctors, their help, guide, as you say, they detect also the spiritual obsession worsening the patient's condition. True. I mean, it's just a matter of time, a matter of people become a little bit more spiritualized and see such a thing. And it's interesting here because it for some may think that that, oh, this would happen when everybody becomes a spiritist. No. Other religions also, there is spiritualist religions, right? Most of religions, if we can say that way, they get us connected with something superior than we are. Some of them connect us with our ancestors, so we will pay attention to these things. There will be alarming cases as well that is going to go beyond our comprehension, that will call our attention, as it is calling right now. That once we shift at least our behavior and our thoughts and feelings towards a situation, and we will see positive effects on it, that we're like, wait a minute, where is this coming from? And that perhaps will be the alertness to that area. But a great reminder. I thank you for this great reminder. It is definitely helping all of us. What I would add to it, as we were saying earlier today, is that this will also be true in economics. This will also be true in different, other sciences. This will also be true in our day-to-day lives. That once we start thinking, okay, why is my perception about this individual adverse? Why do I, have these issues when I come in contact with this situation? Who knows, right? Hopefully, we'll be open with this. And yes, Yasko said, good spirits never rest. Daniel says, thank you, Leo, for bringing the highlight of these 22 chapters. In that way, what was the most surprising information you have got from? Wow, Daniel. Very well. Very good question. If anything, it's not that something that I did not know, and there are several elements that I did not know how it happens, for example. But it was the emphasis on our connection with the other side, and how that connection emphasizes goodness and emphasizes the negative as well. We all have the ability to change. So for me, it is very transformational in that sense. I quite often have heard from people this year, because of what we have been through, that 2020 was a lost year. But on the other side, I see so much being done. On the other side, I see people, continue to study, continue to work, continue to dedicate their lives, especially on the medical field. So there is, it all depends on what we connect, and that dictates on who we are. That changes, our presence in the goodness, right? So I think the connection that we have with one another was a great emphasis that I received from this, that to me was very enlightening and surprising as well. Paula says, I'm really encouraged by the good news of the possibility of our awakening now, installing love and truth in our hearts rather than the fear and anger, the great battle of our inner landscape. Very true. All the messages, all the different changes that is happening in the world is certainly very refreshing to all of us. And what I would say, as we saw in chapter 21 today, is that the change starts with us. It is a fallacy for all of us to believe that changes will come from elsewhere. It will come. Obviously, we're receiving the help, but if we don't open our hearts and our minds for it, guess what? We're not going to see it, and we'll always connect with the negative. So I think it's important for us to do our part. If we don't know how to do it, connect with others, question ourselves, right? And let us instill or start the changes within ourselves. Rosaldo actually say, thank you, Leo. No, thank you for being here with us. And then we move on to Alba. Fantastic book. Thank you for bringing your highlights to us. I'm wondering what would be the re-educational plan for those in position of power in the lower spiritual regions. Manuel Filomena de Miranda mentioned it in the book. Not yet. That will come next. So stay put, and we're going to tell you where and when we will actually find out about what's going to happen in the lower regions, right? But more to come. Remember, they're waiting for the the results of their first encounter that they had. So it's important for us to wait a little bit, and even though we want to see the transformation right away, but we'll see what Manuel Filomena has for us. And then Aloysio say the history just keeps repeating. To a certain degree, Aloysio, it repeats, but I believe the vibrational psychosphere or of the planet Earth right now is of redirecting our energies. We fight, and it gets to a point that, guess what, we get tired. The analogy that I would like to bring is of a baby. The baby, when or a young kid or toddler knows that has to go to sleep, and what do? They keep fighting, they keep running, they keep kind of fighting its own body, that I don't want to go to sleep, I want to keep going, it gets to a point that it can't take no more, and guess what, it just falls asleep, right? It's not that we will fall asleep, it will come to a moment that we will ask for truth. We'll ask for a different beginning. Perhaps that may come not from both sides of the table in terms of us dealing with others. It will come from us, and perhaps it will be rejected by the other side, but we'll be so tired that it's like, okay, I have done my part. Now I'll be waiting for you and continue with my life to correspond to it until the day that we join hands. But it repeats itself, but in a progressive way. If we think that it continues in a negative way, at the same time, we throw away the idea that we have a creator, and that we have a better future for all of us. So it happens in a progressive way. Right now, we're reaping the consequences of our acts of the past, but it's up to us to look at it and say, this is not suffering, this is an opportunity for me to become a better individual. Continue on, dear friends. I will share this with you once more here. Give me 1 second. Let's actually, let me stop this right here. Stop screening. I will share it again because I want to share this with you and give you the highlights that we will bring here. Here is what's going to happen in the future. I cannot see my screen right now, but I'll try to present to you the continuation of this amazing endeavor that we start in 2020. I'm very happy to be here every month showing this and sharing this with you. We will only give continuation. The work continues. This is this book, The Dawn of a New Era, is actually the book, the book right after Planetary Transition. There are 3 books, and who knows, we'll actually talk about a little bit more of the 3rd book as well in the future. But for now, what we would like to commit for 2021 is a discussion of this amazing book, Dawn on a New Era. And for Alba, that actually have asked, on what happens in the future in terms of connecting with Rabbi Sadok again, how they're going to go to the lower region. It's going to be here in this book. We will see new responsibilities, a highly significant spiritual endeavor, delving into understanding, great challenge, encountering with the darkness, all of these things. I am presuming that it will happen here. I'm not going to lie to you. I have not read the book yet, but I know that this is actually a continuation of the Planetary Transition. We'll, do my best to bring, better highlights, less text as usual. I like to say that sometimes it escapes me the capability of explaining to you what Manuel Filomena de Miranda and the mentors are trying to bring. But for sure, this is going to be where we will actually share, we'll continue to share with one another and help one another in this sense. So with no further ado, I would like to thank everyone for this amazing work that we put together. and hopefully in the future we'll get a better understanding of what they're trying to bring to us here. I am still learning, and I learn with your questions. I learn with all the hard work that the SSB has put forth, and all the things that we learn from these amazing mentors. Asking you, as we like to say at the SSB, that put into practice. The only thing that we can ask from one another is that we practice what we learn here in our day-to-day lives in the means, with the means that we have. Not asking us to be anything greater than we cannot be, because this is exactly when we get hurt, trying to be something that we're not, or trying to expose ourselves on the way we're truly not. So let us be humble, but at the same time work hard to change the planet Earth the best way we can. I would like to then to invite everyone to give thanks to our dear Creator in a moment of prayer, giving thanks for these 22 chapters, these 11 sessions that we had, working together and sharing this moment. Dear Master Jesus, we're thankful for this amazing moment that we had tonight, but also for the past 10 months when we came together and we decided to learn, share, revisit important topics of our lives, important enlightenments, hoping that those who will connect with us in the future, by watching these talks, by watching these enlightened moments, can learn with us as well. May the results of these teachings be of an uplifting nature, commemorating the goodness that you have applied over our hearts and our minds. We give thanks for each comment, each participation, the presence of our brothers and sisters. When we started this physically at the SSB, and we gave continuation here virtually, guide each mind who connected with us and those connected with these minds, so that our brothers and sisters from Alcyone can find on us the understanding that they are here in our cooperation. May your guidance be with us throughout this moment that we're living through, the end of the year, when we remind ourselves of our Master Jesus, the amazing Thanksgiving holiday that we're about to receive, and everything that comes after. May your guidance be with us, and so be it. Dear friends, until next time, and so be it. Thank you.